Thank you for joining and welcome to another episode with Azim Sahir, a human capital specialist who has designed this podcast to inspire people to live meaningful lives and to pursue their passion. This is Season 8. In this podcast, Azim gives a laid-back look at the important aspects of life and business through the lens of emotional intelligence. You will learn how emotional intelligence can influence your success in both personal and professional life. You will hear key life lessons and tips from prominent personalities, business leaders, entrepreneurs, EI practitioners, and executive coaches from all over the world. You can also watch the video version of this podcast on his YouTube channel. So sit back, relax with a cup of coffee, and let's get to the show. AI Cafe with Azim.
Leaders in high-stakes situations play a crucial role in guiding their teams and organizations through challenging and pivotal moments. It is important for a leader to adopt skill that matters in those moments. What are the qualities, strategies, and responsibilities of a leader need to excel in a high-stake environment? How effective leaders can maintain composure, make decisions, inspire confidence, and foster a sense of unity and resilience within their teams when stakes are at their highest. In such situation, do leaders need to take a command approach or an approach of coaching? Very warm welcome to the Season 8 of EI Cafe with Azim. And I'm your host, Azim Sair, a human capital specialist, a Lego series play facilitator, an ICF certified PCC level coach, an emotional intelligence and emotional culture tech practitioner. Of course, a facilitator with limited learning solutions. Here we again for another interesting episode, a 30 minutes of valuable learning. Today, we are going to talk about how do you move from command to coaching leadership style in a high-stakes situation. Let me introduce my guest for today. She's known globally as one of the top leaders in the field of leadership coaching. She has been the faculty of Harvard for 30 years and a visiting professor at Henley Business School. She works with global leaders and their teams to help them close the gap between their intention and their impact. Thinkers 50 shortlisted her one of the top 8 coaches in the world due to her international impact. And Marshall Goldsmith ranked her as the #1 leadership coach in the world. With 40,000 hours of experience, she described as a lateral thinker who pushes the edges with a sense of humor as a leader, as a coach. Someone out there, push them out of their comfort zone. Her work developing a leader as a coach program, one of Harvard's inaugural award for the culture of excellence in mentoring, has been rolled out and scaled thousands of leaders and their teams in public and private sector. At Harvard Medical School, Dr. Kauffman received a $2 million grant to launch the Institute of Coaching. She chairs the Harvard Medical School's annual coaching conference as well. Ladies and gentlemen, let me welcome Carol Kauffman. So today I'm being a powerhouse in the house. Carol, thank you very much. I'm officially welcoming you to the cafe.
Thank you. And interestingly, as we talk about the real-time leadership, one of the things we see is that it works at the top of the house, but it also works in your own house, and we can follow whatever direction comes up with the two of us.
Brilliant. So thank you very much. So I've been following you. I've been attending your webinars. You are being a host. I've listened to your couple of podcasts. I'm on the way of reading your book as well. So starting has been really amazing. So I've picked up a couple of things. I think, Carol, it's important for us to understand real leadership and the whole situation, high-stakes situation. I think it's real now. I think the whole globe is going through crisis and, job losses, many things. I would like to ask, I'd like to start this conversation by asking you, what is your view when I say high-stakes situation? What exactly comes into mind?
Okay. One thing that, you were mentioned is that things are so volatile right now. So part of high stakes is the volatility. So the consulting firm Accenture has something called the Global Disruption Index. And for 5 years, from 2012 to 2017, the disruption level rose 4%. In the 5 years since, from 2017, it has risen 50%, which is unheard of in our history. So I would say high stakes is that. High stakes is also, you think of it as managing risk or managing threat, but high stakes is also managing opportunity, seeing it and managing it. Because when an offer comes to us that feels over our head, that's very high stakes. So it's high stakes in both directions.
Right. So what I'm hearing you from saying, of course, there can be crisis moment, even though in crisis moment, there can be a threat and there can be an opportunity as well. Right. Kind of really curious to ask, if you go back 2-3 years behind from today, we were in a pandemic situation, right? How do you really put this in this particular scale? Is it an opportunity or a threat?
Oh my goodness, that's a good question. If I just had to make up an answer, I would say 70-30 or 80-20, that it was 70 or 80% threat, but it was 20 or 30% opportunity. A lot of, one CEO that I'm good friends with had a company that made it made things for conferences, right? All that stuff, you go to the conference and okay, so that was his company. And 2 or 3 weeks into the pandemic, he flipped it so that he was making masks. So that was an incredible opportunity. Obviously, the freedom we now have to work remotely has shot up, and I think is a real advantage. And for some companies, it's a problem. So I'd say there are many, many things in there. And of course, later on today, I'll be at Moderna. And of course, that's an example of they were incredible with, sort of getting the RNA kind of platform going, et cetera, et cetera. So I'd say more threat, but opportunity arose.
Here's my take, Carol. I believe that at this moment, we have made a lot of opportunities with those threats. One great example, I've always believed, now I'm talking to you via Zoom.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So on that note, let me come to your book. Your book title is Real-Time Leadership, and the tagline states, "Find your winning move when stakes are high." What is this move you're referring in this particular tagline?
Sure. So MOVE is MOVE, and it is how we categorized the different frameworks people can use to help themselves in high stakes situations. So first I just name them, and then you can ask about which one you're most interested in. But backing up, what happened is in 2017, David Noble and I were thinking about what frameworks do we use in coaching, and which are the ones that we've seen have really helped the CEOs that we work with. And so we went on a whiteboard and we went through and we had about 100 different frameworks that we use. And what David did was went through and categorized them into 4 buckets. And then that became MOVE. So under high stakes, the most important thing for us to do is, as Viktor Frankl, who wrote Man's Search for Meaning, described, is between every stimulus and response, there is a space. And in that space is our freedom. And that is the freedom to choose what we need to do, who we need to be, how we need to relate, the pathways that we should take, check if we're seeing clearly, and then figure out how to engage and move forward. And that actually is the MOVE model. M is to be mindfully alert. Mindful in that we're not prejudging what's around us, but alert like an athlete. O is to be an options generator. There's a lot of research that if you have multiple paths forward, you're far more likely to succeed. So you can have grit, but if you don't have flexibility, you only can go in one direction. Then V is to validate your vantage point. In terms of opportunities and threats, are you over-indexing on opportunity? Are you over-indexing on threat? Or can you just see reality for what it is? And then E is to engage and then affect change as an individual, as a team, or at scale. And so that's what the MOVE stands for.
Wow, that is brilliant. So what you're trying to say is move from, for you to really navigate in a high stakes situation as a leader, this move can really help to be in the game.
Well, not only in the game, it can be the difference between spectacular success and spectacular failure on a large level or on a small level, like in any conversation. How do you want to overcome your reflexes and then be really talking to the person you're with, a report, a colleague, your board, your team? How can you be flexible in the moment? And there was some research, amazing, it blew me away. I wish I knew it before the book was like out of my hands. A group of scientists looked at, get this, 53,000 research studies.
Oh.
Of those, they had very high standards of what could be included. At the end of the day, just about 300 studies survived that process. And so they looked at, in a research way, what happened to you? And then there's that box, and then the outcome. And what was in that box when they went through hundreds of variables? It all came down to flexibility. The flexibility, and we think of flexibility as freedom to choose, rather than stay in your rut.
Wow. You know, when we are talking about mindful, something came into my mind. I'm trying to connect where does this piece fix in this particular whole move puzzle, emotional intelligence. How does this fix in for a leader to have this particular move framework to work in?
Basically, at every stage, because what is emotional intelligence? Emotional intelligence is when I'm talking to you, I am able to manage myself. Okay, so if emotions come up in me, I can manage them. If all of a sudden I'm triggered for some reason, how can I manage that? If I'm overly intense, I need to know how to downshift. So it's all about choice. Emotional intelligence is I know what's happening. I've got self-awareness. I've got self-responsibility, and I can choose, one, how to react inside myself, how to react to what I have to do, and, how to react in terms of our interaction, which is the M of move. So it's the 3 dimensions of leadership. What do I need to do? How can I make sure I'm doing the right thing? Who do I need to be right now in order to make that happen? And then how do I need to relate to you in order to either help work through you or have you operate at your best? So that is every step of the way. And then later, if we go through the others, emotional intelligence and flexibility is absolutely crucial to develop in yourself.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you for sharing that. So, Carol, you have worked with a lot of CEOs, and you have worked with a lot of leaders and create that impact, and that's what we've been called, right? Impactful coach. Here's my questions. High stakes situation. It's very, very, very tough for any leaders, right? And at the same time, we talked about emotional intelligence. The question is, how can they really manage? Are they really in a high stakes situation? Are they really be in the commanding room and, in the war room, they're trying to manage certain things? Because I think the whole globe is going through recessions, because from our part, our main, in Sri Lanka, main industries which bring foreign currencies for us is tourism and exports in terms of apparels, right? So now we do have a tough time because our major market is US. When US is going through inflation, cost of living, so there's an impact for us. So leaders in these organizations have a tough time. So
Yeah.
how can we move them from a commanding position to coaching style of leadership through this framework?
Well, first of all, sometimes you need to be able to be commanding. So the first thing is a coach approach to leadership is crucial for people to develop, but it's not the thing you use all the time. Because again, we talked about in any situations, you want to be an options generator, which is I may need to be directive and in commanding in this situation, or I may need to sort of hold back, be thoughtful, and have a more, group leader, or I need to be very nurturant and create psychological safety. And I need to be able to communicate well, which, as we'll talk about later, those are the 4 core options. But the thing is, I would say for leaders, try to experiment. Start out with when you're in a situation and you're about to say, okay, do this, ask one more question. Like just ask to the person, what do you think is a good idea to do? Like just one question. How would you proceed? What are your thoughts? And just try to pull something from the people that you're working with. Now, what do you need for that? What you need for that is some belief that the other person can say something. And chances they're working for you, you saw something good in them, and try to pull out before you automatically install. And I think of that like as a figure 8. If we think of the consulting, commanding over here and the coaching over here, you put them together and you make a figure 8. Here's maybe command needs to be here, coaching needs to be here, maybe coaching needs to be here, and command needs to be here. But how do you know what to do? Now take that figure 8 and turn it between you and me. Okay, so let's say I am your boss. What I want to do is pull from you. Okay, listen, we're losing market share, things are happening, what do you think we should do? Like, what else do you think we should do? Like, I'm going to pull from you. And then you're going to maybe give me 3 or 4 things. I'm going to say, oh, so listen, I think this is what we need to do. Okay, now I'm going into command, 2 or 3 sentences. Listen, so I think we should do this and this and this. We can figure out in what order. Okay, so this is what we need to do. What do you think? So it's like pull from you, give my offer or my command, and then pull back from you. So it's this constant dance where I need to have the coaching part developed. And then it's not like I have to give up every other way of leadership, because like in the pandemic, I supervised many leadership coaches. And in the pandemic, all the coaches that I were talking about were saying like, oh my goodness, my leaders are all regressing. And I'm like, what do you mean? They go like, they're all becoming directive now. They were so working on being transformative or whatever. And I'm like, why are you calling that a regression? We need to be responsive to what's going on around us. And in a chaotic situation, people need direction. Then when it gets to just complexity, then more collaboration and pulling in. But we need to be flexible to what's going on around us. So I do think companies are flat, and a lot of people aren't tolerating the command approach anymore. But you need both. So maybe before it was like 90-10, now it's either 50-50 or 80-20 with more of this collaboration and coaching hits it.
I think the percentage depends on the person and the context.
Exactly. And that's what flexibility, and how do you figure that out? A lot of that, it's business strategy, but it's also emotional intelligence.
Brilliant. Thank you for sharing that. And that I think that's a huge plus points and the bonus points on for the listeners over here going to listen and watch this particular episode. So Cal, I do understand we talked about the percentage and you need to have both. How can a leader shift from command to coach style? What are things our leaders can, look up to?
Okay, let me give you a coaching model that super simple. Now, what I'd like you to do, I'm not going to make you talk about it in depth, but first for yourself, think of one aspect of your leadership that you would like to work on. What's something you would want to develop in yourself?
It's a collaboration.
Collaboration. Okay, great. So you're in good company. So the first question is, what do you want to work on and why? So why is working on collaboration important to you?
Because that's the way forward, because I can't run anymore alone. It's going to be a win-win situation. That's what I'm looking out for, because if I run alone, I need some help at some time because I might get stuck.
Okay, perfect. So let me tell you what we just did. This is the first foundation question before the 4 questions that are the entire model of coaching. Why do I ask, why does that matter to you? Is because I want to know that it's really intrinsic to you. You actually care about it, as opposed to, well, I've heard I should be collaborative. It's like, okay, that doesn't sound like you really want to be collaborative. How do we find out what you do want? And so it could be, let's say if it didn't really matter to you, but you'd say, well, without it, I'm not going to be successful. And I'll say, okay, so let's work on being successful. Work on what the person really wants. Okay, so for you, collaboration. Then the entire model is 4 questions, and you can make them numbers. So the first question is, if you were a 10 out of 10 on collaboration, what would you look like? What would you be doing? What would you feeling? If we had a video camera of you, what would we be seeing? And then really paint a picture of that. Now, if I was going to say what's a terrible collaborator, that's easy. But if I make you really think about what is a great collaborator, that's harder. But I'm going to pull and pull and pull and pull to pull out that picture. Then I'm going to say, on a scale of 1 to 10, what would you rate yourself now? So what would you rate yourself now? What number would you give yourself for collaboration? Make up a number.
I'd say I'm at a 4.
Okay. So then everybody thinks the next question should be, how do you get from a 4 to a 10? Okay. Wrong question. Wrong question entirely. The next question. So first is, what would a 10 out of 10 look like? What are you now? And then what is it you're doing right that you are a 4 and not a 3 or a 3.5? And that's the art of positive confrontation. So I'm going to make you think through, okay, wait a minute. Okay, why aren't you a 3? What are you doing right and how you collaborate now? And you'll tell me a little bit. I'm like, what else do you do? You'll tell me a little bit. And again, if I said, where do you screw up in collaboration? You could answer me easily. Because brains are evolutionarily primed to see problems and to fix things. But if I ask you, what are you doing right? It's much harder, but you keep going until the person you're talking to just like really doesn't have anything left. And then you do it one more time. Then the last question is, what could you do over the next 4 to 8 weeks to get from a 4 to a 4.5? What can you do? And then, 4 to 8 weeks later, you do it again. So that's the entire coaching model. So, let's say you're the boss and you have to give a performance review. And usually you would just say, okay, listen, Azim, you just need to be more collaborative. We're hearing things, you're this and this and this. Okay, so if I want to do a coaching mindset, also, so hey, Azim, we're getting feedback that you need to be more collaborative. If you were able to be more collaborative, like what would that look like? What would that look like with your team? What would that look like? And so it really make you think about that. And it's a very different way of doing a performance review, particularly when you say, well, what are you doing right already? Now, as your boss, first of all, I'm going to shut up and let you talk.
Yeah.
But I might say, well, actually, you seem to be collaborating really well in these situations. Is there a way you could be able to take from here and put it over here, which in essence is a strengths orientation.
So what I'm saying, what you're saying is, what am I doing right now?
Yep.
Doing correctly, and try to use that as a platform to push me forward. Think myself to reflect, to move forward. Is that correct, Carol?
That's more than correct. Actually, I'm gonna use that now myself because I haven't actually said before. I would say it's a good basis or a place to start. But I really like that language. It's a platform. That's exactly right. It's a behavioral platform that you can then move from. I love that. Yes.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Because why I love the part you mentioned about reviews, because when leaders sit down with the reviews, they always talk about the numbers, and they start talking about the numbers. Why you have not achieved, why you're not done that, why you have not done that. So what you're talking about, negative reinforcement rather than a positive reinforcement, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And again, most of the leaders I work with are very competitive. So when I talk to them about it's much harder to do this positive evaluation, they want to do it more just because they want to win at doing something.
Right. Brilliant. So thank you very much for sharing that. Our time is coming to an end of conversation. I just want to, quickly pick your head on this particular question. We did talk about how important leader coach approach is. What are some of the actions can leaders take to become a leader coach, especially in conversations like what we just talked about?
Okay. And as a resource, I should send you a short video I did on leader as coach and sort of 5 things to do to start being leader as coach, which I can't remember the exact numbers anymore, what they were. But essentially, first of all, it's your mindset. Start looking for what's right in the person that you're working with. Have a growth mindset about that person. The big one is then try to overcome your reflex of automatically telling people what to do. Now that's hard. So just ask a question. Like just start out, ask a question. Think about where does the person want to go? Like what's their future state? They're 10 out of 10. They did really well. And then how can you remind them of their strengths and their capacity to overcome this obstacle? You don't minimize the obstacle, but you emphasize. So listen, this is really hard. I believe you have the resource to be able to do this. Let's figure out how to get there. And then to do that, pulling on the person as well as the commanding and the controlling.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. That's very helpful. I think I saw that video, Carol. It'll be great if you can give me the permission to just plug in that particular element into this particular podcast. Also, it'll be great. So, finally, before I let you go, anything you want to share as what we are heading? What a golden nugget from your end, just to complete the task.
But you're just reminding me of something, which is I have a number of demos, coaching demos of me doing the coach by numbers on my website. So if you remember my name, Carol Kauffman, 2 Fs, you go in, I have a private library with demos, and you can actually watch me do it. And sometimes it's not easy. Like I have one video there with this woman where we go through the whole thing, and then I say, how confident are you that you'll be able to do it? And she said something like a 5. I'm like, okay, we picked the wrong thing. We're going to start again.
So I'll put the link on the podcast note also, so people can really access it. Yeah.
Okay. So the probably the main thing is, again, what I said is, how do you make that space between the stimulus and the response and overcome your reflexes? So I would say, just ask yourself, what do I really need to do? Who do I need to be right now? And how does this other person need me to relate? And if you can remember that, okay, so for everybody and for you, I'm going to give you a challenge for the end of our time. Before every meeting that you have over the next 2 days, right before the meeting, ask yourself, who do I want to be right now?
Brilliant. I think that's a brilliant way to end our conversation for today. So ladies and gentlemen, that's the time what we have for today. My key takeaway is the move. It really moved me. I'm going to pick that up. I hope our listeners and audience got plenty of database. So we were listening to Dr. Carol Kauffman, Harvard faculty CEO, coach, co-founder of Institute of Coaching and author of Real-Time Leadership. You can get connected to Carol with her LinkedIn profile. And of course, you can log into www.carolkaufman.com, and I'll put all the links and the podcast note. So Carol, thank you once again. Thank you very much for checking into the cafe and sharing your whole experience and knowledge with our audience.
Thank you. And I'm going to take your platform comment with me.
Thank you.
I'm Carol Kauffman. I am a leadership coach. I teach at Harvard, and my program, Leader as Coach, won the inaugural award for Culture of Mentoring, which is probably why I'm being asked to talk to you. I'm the author of Real-Time Leadership. Find your winning moves when the stakes are high. And here are the 5 things to be a great leader coach. Number 1, future first, not past. When you're working with one of your people and you want to start a project, ask them, if you were a 10 out of 10 on this project, it went really well, what would it look like? Start there. Number 2, focus on what's gone right. Say someone is talking to you about their project, there were some problems with it, and you can say, hey, on a scale of 1 to 10, what would you rate yourself? And let's say it was a 7. Your next question? You're probably wrong. The next question is, if you were a 7, can you say what are all the things you've done right that you were not a 6 or a 6.5? It is harder to do that than label what's wrong. Now, to be a coach, you have to leave your ego at the door. So Olympic level listening, not active listening. Listening with your pores of your being, giving your full attention. Because if someone feels really heard, they'll get up in the night for you. And if you don't, they won't. But then, number 4, you have to switch from the golden rule, doesn't work, to the platinum rule. So do to others as you would want done to you, right? Wrong. Do to others what they would like, and it might be extremely different from what you would like. Imagine a super extrovert boss, super introvert report. You can probably take it from there. Do what the other person needs, which might mean downshift. Last, be agile. You don't need just willpower. You need way power. In any situation, have at least 4 pathways forward. Lean in and engage. Lean back for data. Lean with for caring. And the capacity to do nothing, to pause. The power of pause. So that between the stimulus and response, you can come up with the right thing to do. So whether you need to be a coach or command and control, you actually need to be doing all 4 of these things all the time to be a better leader and, frankly, a better person.
Thank you for tuning in to this podcast of EI Cafe with Azim. We sure do hope you enjoyed it, and if you have any questions, please do reach out. If you haven't done so already, make sure you subscribe to the show that is available on all major podcast platforms so you're notified when a new episode is posted. Please rate, review, and leave a comment and share it with your friends. Thank you so much for listening, and we hope you're leaving with some great insights that can help you in your daily life. Follow Azim on social media and do write to us on topics and experts you'd like to hear from, and we will try to get them on board. Goodbye for now, until we meet again on another episode of EI Cafe with Azim.